everybody. Welcome to V'ger Please, your hateful voyage through the Delta Quadrant, and we thank you once again for listening in to our dulcet tones. I'm Joseph.
I'm Peter.
Well, Peter, it's been another lovely week for us on this Voyager journey. We faced down the barrel of a potential Chakotay episode this week, but I think we were greeted with essentially an episode where Chakotay didn't appear at all, and that set the right tone for me.
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise.
It was. I had no memory of this one at all. I really didn't. So I saw from just the teaser about Chakotay being a main force in it, and he was a main component without having to actually act or laying down any dialogue, which best of both worlds.
This is episode 12 we're on now. What do you think? Does it feel like it's been longer than 12 episodes? Shorter?
It's been longer. I have to say, I am pleased, though, that the last few we've done haven't been, like, total garbage. You know, like, I don't know what your thoughts...
The last couple Voyager episodes that we watched haven't been total garbage, or that our podcast hasn't been total garbage?
Well, both.
Yeah.
If we're being honest. We know when we were in the depths of Tom Paris masturbation fantasy hell, you know, and it barely started in the season and wondering what we got ourselves into, there was some dark times for us.
I still fully believe that there's a lot of dark times ahead of us. I mean, we've barely started picking at the scab. But, I mean, episode 12, we should be able to start formulating our top 10 episodes at this point. I think I got to go back through and look at my notes, and I think I'm going to put a plus or a minus on the top of the page and say, you know, did I like it or did I not like it, and start trying to trim things down to my top 10 and rotating those out as new ones come down the pipe.
You know, I look forward to when we do our live cast to conclude the season and we're able to maybe take a big picture look at the first season and decide what worked and what didn't. But overall, while it's been rough going at times, there's at least been some gems, and most importantly, like, plenty of mediocrity, which is better than having to wallow in shit all the time.
Yeah.
I'll take a bologna sandwich now and then, you know?
I think the crew's growing on me pretty quickly.
There's been, even in the mediocre episodes, scenes where we get some characterization, like last week with B'Elanna, in particular, that, like you said, there's quality there. So this isn't as bad as I feared, but it's bad enough to make it funny, and that's what's important to us.
When I was looking over my thoughts on this episode, I wanted to say, this has been a first time in a while where we've just had the crew, the core crew on the ship, no alien special guest stars, and, all basically ship shots. And then I started looking backwards, and they've had a fair number of, standard crew only, no on-planet locations and Voyager shots only.
Yeah, Parallax... Time and Again. No, not Time and Again. What would the Cloud?
Yeah,
the Cloud was all ship shots for the most part, or special effect shots. What else? This one we just watched. Cathexis definitely qualifies.
Is that the pronunciation we're going with on this one?
That's what I'm going with.
Yeah,
but it's good that they are staying away from doing too much in the way of alien stuff, because quite frankly it's been shit almost every time except for the Kazons.
Yes, it's been literally shit heads,
or escalators in an LA mall to give critical expository dialogue. But here we are, season 1, episode 12, Cathexis.
That's a pet name waiting to happen. What does Cathexis even mean?
Snarf's pubic hair. Well, like much of this episode, doesn't necessarily make a lot of logical sense, but it sounds interesting.
After that last episode we did with the Vulcan ball sweat, I've decided I'm gonna be sitting out the next couple episodes on groin jokes. All right, Cathexis, take her away.
We start in another holodeck simulation, this time with Janeway, with what I presume is supposed to represent like her version of Dixon Hill. You know, if you're a TNG aficionado, you know that Picard's favorite like personal holodeck simulation where Maltese Falcon style detective stories in the persona of Dixon Hill. One of the very first holodeck episode was a Dixon Hill story. Well, we got Janeway doing some personal time on the holodeck, and so her personal fantasy is apparently shitty Downton Abbey.
Was that the vibe you got? Because I thought it was kind of leaning more towards Dark Shadows.
All right, fair. With the dramatic lightning and all that, I can see that.
So yeah, she's, I don't know, a governess or whatever the hell's going on. She shows up, and like this dude pops up behind her, and she's like startled, and I can't tell if she's just playing along with the program or if Janeway's really a sucker for jump scares.
You know, throughout this whole scene, all I could think to myself was that Kate Mulgrew
was in her
clearly
prime.
You could, well, she got famous doing Ryan's Hope, which was a very soap opera-y style show. So this is her home. This is home base for her, right? Yeah. Is this kind of shit?
Yeah.
So she is just like in it. She is in character. She is absolutely all about this persona and this world that she finds herself in. It's like you're watching this. Like, am I still watching Star Trek, or am I watching Kate Mulgrew's side project that just got subbed into UPN's schedule on accident? Because she's 100% in it. There's no sense of loss of character for her, and she's going through the motions of this very boilerplate drama of a English aristocracy governess, of a widowed father, and all of the tropes are being laid out, and great sets and costumes. Looks great.
Yeah, I'm so happy that they can do crappy old-timey England, but every fucking ship we've seen so far has looked like hot garbage and matte painting alien vistas. Way to put that money in the right place, Paramount. I was afraid when this came up. I was like, are they really going to do 2 holodeck episodes back to back? But I mean, the whole thing's basically a big waste of time cold open, because her comm badge goes off, and Harry Kim's like, hey, look, yet again, we've decided to send off our shuttlecraft. Why do you keep sending out shuttlecrafts to do your important work? Like, did they not learn anything from the Tom Paris murder? I don't even know. The Shithead Adventures, Chronicles of Shitheadia.
If whatever they're trading for is vital enough that they got to spend the time to do it, I mean, I get the idea in theory, perhaps, that they have to use their auxiliary craft to go deal with side shit, while Voyager is dealing with, whatever the big problem is. So I got to do multiple things at once. We're here by ourselves, so I'm going to send this shuttlecraft out with these crew members to go make a deal with these people. I'm going to send this one to go deal with these people, and we're going to deal with these people direct. Like, if that was the setup, that they're trying to move several pieces on the chessboard at once, I get it. But
doesn't seem to be the case.
If you're just heading towards vaguely in the direction of the Alpha Quadrant, but you need whatever these guys over here got, we're going to have to wait for the damn shuttlecraft to come back at like warp 4 or whatever the fuck its top speed is anyway. Yeah, so why not just go there yourself and deal with it, rather than send a tin can with a tiny little warp engine attached to it that you're going to be fucking looking at your watch, tapping your foot, waiting for no matter what you do.
It's like Voyager's Batman and the shuttlecraft are like really stupid, incompetent Robins that just get victimized and drag Batman into some shit he wasn't really looking to deal with that day.
And I appreciate that eventually they use that as a story point, but it takes like 4 or 5 years for them to actually finally get there.
So, Kim, he hits up the captain and is like, hey, shuttlecraft's coming back. Everybody seems fucked up on here. Commander Chakotay's unconscious, and Mr. Tuvok is whatever. You ever notice that Tuvok is always Mr. Tuvok? They're never calling him Lieutenant Tuvok.
Well, that's naval jargon. In the Navy, it is an old tradition that if you are a lieutenant, you are referred to as Mr.
I did not know that.
as a gender neutral form of address as well. So female officers that are lieutenants can and often referred to as Mister, which is the first indication that his rank insignia is wrong because they never call him commander. They always either call him lieutenant or Mister. And they finally fixed that in this episode. So a little knowledge for you, Peter. You learned something today. There you go.
The more you know.
Another thing, while we're on the topic of the choice of crew to be sent on this mission, it's Chakotay and Tuvok, the second in command of the vessel, and the next person in the chain of command. So it's now, in terms of the hierarchy of the ship, because they're gone, Janeway, and then the acting first officer is Tom Paris.
Again. And I'll get to an important connection between these two guys here in a couple segments, but they're not the get shit done committee. The two people are just so boring you don't want them around. The shuttle gets in close and Janeway says, "Hey, beam these guys directly into sick bay," and immediately the doctor reports that Tuvok's pretty banged up, but Chakotay, for all intents and purposes, is brain dead. To that I said, well, what else is new?
It's like, what but has there been a change in his status? Like, Janeway comes in, she's still rocking that sort of lesbian chic hair style that they had her in last episode.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. I like it. I think that
I love it. Out
of all of her hairstyles, that this one looks the most Starfleet captain while still being, readily identifiable as a, feminine. I
completely agree. They use the same style for 7 of 9. Here in a few years. I don't think they stick with this for very long with her because I don't recall them using it much. But it stands out because it just looks real good.
Yeah,
that it just looks great on Kate Mulgrew, and like you said, just kind of gives her that look of feminine authority, I would call it.
Yeah.
But she comes in and she has that great facial expression when she's told by the doctor, just as the credits roll, that Chakotay is brain dead.
So they come back after it and they start kind of painting the picture. Tuvok's back up, and while they were on whatever cockamamie mission that necessitated these guys flying away from the mothership in the USS, what is it, when something just serves no purpose other than to drag you into trouble?
Plot device?
No.
MacGuffin?
No. Son of a bitch. Not expendable. Whatever.
Expedient?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. So Tuvok starts laying out on the scene that, he and Chakotay had flown away from the mothership on the USS Liability. And
there you go. You got there, buddy. I believed in you.
I started over fresh, so
I knew you could do it.
So they're there on the.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen. We're going to cut out your brain fart. Of course, that's what I'm going to do.
So they're cruising through some nebula in the USS Liability when some seedy urban youth vessel comes out from the shadows.
It's got a bandana on. Uh-huh. It's from the wrong side of the tracks.
Jumps out, sucker punches them, and then retreats back in. And they both get assailed by some massive energy beam forces that ends up soul-stealing Chakotay and fucking Tuvok up pretty good. And I'm like, okay, well, this isn't 2 holodeck episodes in a row, but this is 2 consecutive episodes in a row where Chakotay and Tuvok clearly no longer have souls again.
It's like Chakotay and Tuvok are once again being abused by the alien of the week.
Between getting absorbed into the holodeck and now being absorbed into a nebula, I don't think Tuvok has any real shot at going to a proper afterlife after this. This dude is definitely just a walking zombie.
We get a couple key moments in the episode. One, apparently whatever the urban youth ship was that came out and assaulted them was from. The ship is apparently from a dark matter nebula, which is, dark matter is a real scientific idea that it exists. So, It's Trek trying to pluck a little bit of real science out there to do something interesting with, albeit I can't imagine that any theories about dark matter uh, relate to this episode beyond that. And then two, they think it's a trap. So what do?
What they do is they give us what as best I can tell, the first actual in-episode scene of the warp nacelles locking into place and beeline it right back for the bad side of the train tracks nebula and go poke around there. Because maybe the USS Liability with the bad luck committee of Tuvok and Chakotay, they need to start paying attention to their mistakes. I think there's going to be power pairs that we see throughout these episodes that you shouldn't put them back together, because when they are in a room together alone, bad stuff's going to happen. And Tuvok and Chakotay are going to be the executive officers of the bad luck committee. But yeah, they beeline it right back. They did not learn any lesson. Losing Tuvok or Chakotay was not enough. Let's go risk some more lives.
Yeah, let's head right into this obvious hazard zone with all of the marbles, with everything we've got. Because my first officer's already had his brain stole out his fucking body and is now a husk laying in my sick bay, possibly for, until we decide to pull the fucking plug on him. So let's go ahead and run our whole ship into this danger and maybe all get our brains eaten by whatever's in there. It seems like a fucking fantastic idea.
He's not just brain dead and dead. Like they're very clear that and the doctor will actually say, soul / consciousness has left from his body, and that, he's not dead. It's just something done stole him.
So they head to the wrong side of the tracks, but before they get very far, they have a little problem with the navigation. Suddenly they've changed course, and Tom can't quite explain how it is they've done so. And of course, it's a tidbit that comes into play here in a little bit, but they start to investigate why it is suddenly course change happened, even though Tom claims he didn't do it. Because the next shot after that is yours and my favorite trope of Voyager, and that is more stereotypical Indian shit vis-a-vis Chakotay. But this time, it's B'Elanna who's doing the cult activity on behalf of Chakotay.
Yes. Now we've explored earlier that Chakotay tried to recruit her, and Torres tried to run interference when the captain was about to meet her spirit animal. And right. I thought maybe Torres survived her encounter with the Chakotay cult intact, but very clearly she has been compromised. She is familiar with the rituals and the Milton Bradley Spirit Adventure board game that she's erected over Chakotay in sickbay.
She's really into whatever this whole spirit wheel stuff is. She lays out in depth an understanding of what Chakotay explained the cult beliefs are on this. She has really absorbed it.
So let's describe this board. It's like a stiff rug hanging from some unseen device, and she's got a bunch of what look like Asian hot rock massage smooth stones.
Yes.
That have something magnetic in them. And then on the Milton Bradley board game rug, there are washers that you can very see that they're like 1/4-inch washers drilled into this rug with Phillips screws. And that's what the magnetic rocks are sticking to. It's like, I don't know, kind of like a big, weird, ugly Oregon Trail Luigi board almost.
That's a very good explanation. That is exactly what it looks like. It is a Ouija board by way of Oregon Trail.
Now, on the off chance that any of this stuff is like legit, real Native American heritage, artifact, whatever stuff, and you're into that, I'm sorry if our likening to Oregon Trail Ouija board has offended you. I assume at this point moving forward that anything and everything regarding Chakotay's faith is fraudulent because the guy arranging all of the stuff is fraudulent. What was his name?
I forget the guy's name. We hashed it out weeks ago. I think when we did our third or fourth episode, where the cultural advisor for all the American Indian spirituality stuff was himself a fraud, which is why, of course, we're so critical of this stuff.
End result is Torres playing her hand on this. That she clearly got some cult indoctrinations. I would say she's got some hesitation when she's kind of having to explain herself to the EMH. Who of course one-ups her. That's a character flaw I think we're going to see out of the EMH for a while. This dude is like Mr. One-Up. Oh, I see you've got
Nico on him.
I see you've got an Oregon Trail Ouija board out, but you have these pieces in the wrong place, and you're actually condemning Chakotay's soul to, I don't know, was like the 3-boob plane of the horse women or something.
Yeah, it was apparently whatever sexy time is on the board is where he was being sent. But I just can't take any of this stuff seriously.
But again, the takeaway out of this conversation for me was that the EMH acknowledges the soul and consciousness, which ties back into our previous transporter conversations and holodeck adventures and all that other stuff. So I think we've set a precedent that, at least as far as Voyage is concerned, humans do have souls.
Speaking of souls, Kes feels a soul, a presence with her Super Saiyan powers. She's meditating in her hyperbaric training simulation with 40x gravity so she can master Kaioken times 10.
Yeah.
And sure enough, she starts to feel a presence.
Not only does she feel the presence, but we as the audience know there's a presence because the camera starts doing this ghosty, blurry cam shake around, float around the scene, I don't know, fly by in her quarters. And this alien presence will continue to make its appearances throughout the rest of the episode with equally silly photography tricks.
Yeah, it was like just like a filter and like a fisheye, I guess, on the lens. Was that they did for the effect? Like, ooh, there's something weird. Kes, because she has psychic powers, is feeling it, and she tells Snarf, who's, jealous that she felt a presence, is otherwise believing her, I suppose, that there's something weird going on. And that's dovetailed by the revelation that there's been more problems with navigating the ship, that it keeps changing course, and all the fingers keep getting pointed back at Tom Paris as who's responsible for doing this. And no one brings up, like, Tom, are you changing course because you want Chakotay to stay brain dead? Like, I mean, I know you guys didn't get along, but is that what's happening? Like, no one actually brings that up as a motivation.
What an excellent scapegoat. Episode after episode, we see Tom just being on the receiving end of every sort of scandal or fiasco.
Well, you get what you deserve when when you promote your sex criminal to, steer the ship and be in your chain of command. You get what you fucking deserve.
Yeah.
They hired the Harvey Weinstein of the Delta Quadrant. You get the bad press that comes with it.
I can't tell if it's an advantageous position or a bad one for Paris, because he doesn't really seem to care about his convict status. And, the more false events that get laid at his feet, I think the time he does get around to being a bad guy and really doing something terrible, like breaking into a crewmate's quarters and standing over their bed and dragging them off to a sex dungeon. Like, come on, man. How many times have I had like some bullshit someone tried to pin on me? Come on, Captain. You know me. I wouldn't possibly do this. I'm sure it's some sort of alien interference again. Oh, Tom, I guess you're right. Psych.
Someone messed with the console? Wasn't me. Someone may have sexually assaulted Harry Kim at night? Possible suspect. But what are we talking about here? We're talking about the helm control.
Right. So Helm rerouted course away from the nebula, the dark side nebula. They transferred helm control up to Harry Kim station, and then all of a sudden, ship corrects again from, I don't know, some engineering post. When Paris gets up there, captain's asking B'Elanna down in engineering, hey, what's going on? How'd this happen? Are you screwing around down there? And she said, no, the only person I saw in that area was Tom. So that's two fingers getting pointed at Paris now. You know, there's a pretty good exchange between Janeway, Tuvok, and Paris about what's going on here. And Janeway says, you know, I don't think we're dealing with mutiny at this point, but clearly, you know, you are not out of the woods and there might be other factors affecting you, which I thought was cool, that there's some introspection here, and they do learn that, hey, from time to time people are out of control or under the influence of something else. And even though we believe the best intentions of our crew members, you know, you got to be careful with this stuff. And off to sickbay you're going to go for some scans.
Well, I think that this is a stronger Janeway episode overall. And with the stronger Janeway episode comes the more command presence and putting stuff together. So she kind of gives Tom that sort of like side eye, like, come on, dude, what the fuck are you up to? Like, he doesn't like accuse him of it, but like, are you sure like you didn't maybe there's something that you can't remember? But he's steadfast. Tom's like 100% like, I really not fucking with any of this, I swear to God. And they take him down to sick bay.
We got a new character who has come in to replace the Joe Carey and the Seska.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Fred Durst.
Yes! Oh, God, Durst. What a terrible name to be cursed with in the 90s.
Why would you do that? I mean, you know damn well what people are going to see. Like, when this guy steps up to, you know, escort Paris to sickbay, he might as well have just been like, it's my way or the highway.
Oh, man, what an artifact of its time. Fred Durst.
Yeah. I can't tell if Durst is engineering or security.
Well, you know, he's wearing the gold uniform, so it could be one of the other. I think it's more operations, kind of like Data's role, which is more on the engineering side, as far as I can tell. It would seem to me his natural role would be more what Harry Kim's in charge of.
It seems to me he should have a fucking burgundy uniform on, because if there's one thing I can smell, it's a red shirt, and I will be willing to put some gold press latinum on the line and saying that I don't think Durst is going to survive the season.
Well, they give the guy quite a bit of in terms of lines. It was surprising. It started to really stick out to me how often they had this guy talk. Especially near the end, they just have this guy in shot with like the main cast.
Two things happen. Either Durst is getting set up for a big fall, or Durst, the guy portraying him, won some sort of like Cheerios, some sort of Cheerios contest to appear in an episode of Star Trek Voyager.
Maybe it was his birthday. Maybe he's like the key grip, and they're like, "Hey, let's let Larry onto the set and put him in a gold uniform and give him some lines." You know, he's going through some tough times. His wife left him. You know, we'll give him all the filler dialogue.
His hair's thinning, but you know what? He'll be a good everyman for us to start promoting in here.
But let's name him after that really obnoxious nu metal singer, though, just so that he doesn't get too big a head.
That's the guy that's always listening to Limp Bizkit. Can we call him Lieutenant Biscuit? No? All right. Well, let's just go with Durst.
Oh, man. There's going to be people who listen to this and are going to be like, what's Limp Bizkit? What's Fred Durst? And I say to all of you that are in the sound of my voice, do everything in your power to avoid that knowledge. Do not go to Google. Do not go to YouTube. It may knowledge your brain. You may want to know why. But you exist in a world without these things now. And that's a sacrifice your elders made on your behalf. Don't make like our sacrifice in vain. Do not Google that.
Yeah. I mean, it could be worse. He could have been like Lieutenant Smashmouth or something.
Oh, or Lieutenant Jamiroquai would be the real...
I like Jamiroquai.
You are a terrible person, and that make terrible choices. That's what you are.
Yeah. So anyways, off they go to sickbay, and my next favorite technology revelation we get a taste of here is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the EMH, and he's made a startling discovery.
Yes.
That they have memory engrams on file for Paris. I don't know how far back this goes, but we've got some sort of Federation mind reading, thought police records. I don't know, but they got memory engrams of Paris, and at two key moments, his memory engrams radically shift from what would be expected to something alien, something foreign.
It's worth pointing out that before this happens, there's suddenly a power shutdown in engineering, and Torres shut the warp core down, but she doesn't remember doing it. And then after that, they check the both of them out and they find this information. So Torres also gets affected by whatever this, aphageous sort of episode is, in which you just suddenly do things but don't remember doing it. And every time it happens, it's to prevent the ship from going to the other side of the tracks. That's happening every time.
They play the music and it's like the startling revelation, but instead of being focused on the fact that you've got Federation crew getting possessed while on duty in key parts of the ship, I'm struck again. I jump back to was it Parallax with Seska? Was that Seska Byrne Queen Parallax?
No, that was State of Flux.
State of Flux. You got two people you got all the ship's attention on as saboteurs and traitors. You don't have fucking security cameras to watch these people, but you've got memory engrams. Like you're actively recording everybody's fucking brainwaves. Like,
it really feels like the 26th century might have forgotten some key technologies, in between their miraculous ability to create matter from energy and to apparently read minds with computers and create sentient people with computers. They forgot that maybe they should just, throw some eyes in the sky up there so they can keep an eye on what the fuck is going on in the critical parts of...
Not to mention the door locks, which still haven't seemed to make an appearance in Star Trek Voyager yet.
Oh, Jesus.
But, so you've got the startling revelation that maybe there is alien presence that accompanied them back from the dark nebula, and you might have a rogue alien running around on the ship. And I thought that was a pretty cool spine tingler there. I think invisible threats are pretty cool. And, the idea that just because you can't see a problem doesn't mean it's not there. What movie was it where there was a stow? Maybe it was Predator, where they just noticed a radical weight shift in a cargo area and they knew that they had a stowaway, even though they, everything looked fine in there.
I'm going to admit a dark revelation to you, Peter. Something that will scar my reputation as a nerd and my personal regard I'm sure that you hold for me. I've never watched Predator. I've watched Predator 2. I've watched Predators. I watched Alien vs. Predator.
What?
I've never watched the original Arnold Schwarzenegger Predator.
Well, first of all, I think I'm wrong that it was Predator 1 where this weight pressure plate thing happens. How do you watch fucking Predators, but you haven't seen Predator?
I once sat down specifically to alleviate this. It was on TV. It just started. I'm like, I'm going to watch this. I watched the first 15 minutes before the actual Predator shows up. And I don't know what happened, but I had to turn it off and go do something. And that was my moment to finally to make up for this gap in my nerd knowledge.
I'm going to tell you what, if it was on TV, you're better off not watching it because they're going to cut all the good stuff out anyways. But Predator, awesome movie. Get back to it. But so anyways, yeah, you've got this Phantom Menace that is potentially infiltrated the ship. Not only is it invisible, but apparently has the ability to possess crew members against their will and fuck with some very key systems. And that's got to be terrifying. Another great example of the horrors of space. It's been pretty benevolent thing so far with course corrections and engine shutdowns, but what happens when it's decompressing cabins into space, or transporting the captain into the vacuum of space? I mean, there's a lot of problems that you could have go down, and Janeway starts, it's real talk time.
She empowers the doctor. as the one thing on the ship that has the ability to make choices, that is obviously immune to a biological being possessing, the people on the ship that can't affect him. So she gives the command codes to the doctor to say, you're a failsafe. If one of us starts acting fucking crazy, you can basically lock us out of the system and prevent us from continuing to do whatever we're trying to do.
Ties back to something we started talking about last week, and that is the ultimate authority of the chief medical officer, which she does specifically call, Schweitzer or the EMH, whatever you want to call him, chief medical officer, despite his formal rank within Starfleet. But he's again shown to be a higher authority with some real clout in an emergency situation. And I think that is absolutely the right call to make there. I got a criticism, one of the reoccurring themes that we see with Starfleet security. So you got to verify your identity to the computer when you do big administrative actions like hand over these codes. And it's always like, authorization, Janeway, Alpha 2, 3, Romeo, whatever.
Right.
I don't know, man. Verbally saying what your password is in a room full of people doesn't seem like best for security practices. It's always kind of.
But it seems so cool whenever it's like, man, I'll always remember that Star Trek 3, like, where they're entering in the self-destruct codes to the Enterprise, like 001 destruct, with a look on Kirk's face. It's so dramatic.
I don't know, man. If my captain was to look at me like, lock out all, non-bridge related consoles, authorization, Janeway, password, banana splits Fridays.
Keep that shit in mind when you want to go surf porn on
60 times 69. They hand over the codes to EMH. Smart move there. And then they move out into the hallway where they start walking down, having some real talk. And this is it's like Tuvok, Janeway.
And then Kes rolls up. Yeah, it's just it's Tuvok and Janeway talking about it, and Kes rolls up and says, I've heard about the alien that's possessing people. And immediately...
How?
Yes!
How?
Everyone...
How? Bitch, you pointy-eared bitch. What? You're using those big crusty ears to lean against the wall and eavesdrop? We just literally had this conversation. I just found out about it. Nobody else in the ship knows. Don't come in here saying, I heard it around the mess hall. I heard it through the grapevine. We've got a telepathic alien poltergeist that's seizing people and I'd have grabbed her ass by the throat and picked her up and been like, who are you? Where are you from?
It's a plot hole the size of the fucking Holland Tunnel. How the fuck does this episode go to print with this sequence? There's no way that Cass can possibly know that information. No one except the two people who are talking about it know that information. No one knows.
Was she sitting under the table?
They called for an intruder alert, but they didn't specify what or how. I mean, it's... Oh, God. Everyone I was watching the episode with immediately was just like, what? How the fuck does this bitch know? How does she fucking know this? But whatever, she says she knows, and she goes off with Tuvok to talk about doing a mind meld to use her psychic powers to fucking find the thing. And next shot we get is both Tuvok and Kes unconscious in the turbo lift, and there's some suspicious bruising on Kes's neck that we see.
How that wasn't immediately identifiable as a fucking nerve pinch.
Yeah, that... So, spoiler alert.
Come on.
Tuvok attacked Kes. Nerve pinch. That's that thing that you immediately thought of, it's true. And unfortunately, this episode takes 10 more minutes to build this false tension about, what happened to Kes? What could have possibly happened? That thing that was immediately obvious to everyone who saw it, that she's got this bruising right where she would be neck pinched, next to a Vulcan who knows how to neck pinch. Yes, yeah. That's it. That's the fucking mystery solved. Right
Here's
there.
your options of what happened in this scene. Either James Bond was waiting in the turbo lift and then in the style of GoldenEye, karate chopped her ass right on the neck. She got ambushed by a hickey vampire. Or the Vulcan who went into the turbolift with her, pinched her ass, and then somehow knocked himself out. This, I'll tell you, Tuvok's got a really good track record for getting knocked the fuck out. Like, he I think, is on a quest to dethrone Worf as the security officer to get his ass kicked the most.
Well, I will defend the ass kickings that Worf gets to the end of time, because when you're the security officer and you want to demonstrate a threat, you have to basically fail at being a security officer, or it's not a threat, right? So Worf gets his ass kicked all the time because whatever they're facing has to be better than Worf, or it's not a threat. Likewise, whatever they're facing has to be better than Tuvok, or it's not a threat. It's a difficult position in terms of establishing credibility with your security officers, because if they are good at their jobs, then the episode is over. I get that. Like, I get that Tuvok has to suck sometimes, just like Worf did. However, they haul Kes and Tuvok to sickbay. Kes is out the game now. She's done for the episode. She's knocked out. But Tuvok's okay again. Whatever.
Is the Doctor still around at this point?
He is.
All right, I got big plot hole number 2. You've got your Kes performing the function of a Mary Sue who could zap this thing right in the ass where it stands, right? She got Vulcan nerve pinch, and she is out of commission the rest of this episode. You're telling me that the EMH who not more than 3 episodes ago brought someone back from the death of brain cancer can't wake Kes up with some smelling salts?
Our whole look at medical science in this show is going to be running up against this problem a lot, because that episode broke common sense when it came to medical technology in this fictional universe.
I'm going to go ahead and propose that for I don't know, until we've got a really sick burn joke lined up. Like, we don't even fucking bother mentioning Federation necromancy anymore, just because it's so absurd that they even brought that on the fucking table. But Federation necromancy aside, she got knocked out. We're not talking about someone who just went through, some transporter accident or breathed a bunch of bad chemicals or fell down a fucking chasm. Like, she just got Vulcan nerve pinch. People shrug that shit off within 20 minutes all the time. Silly to believe that they can't wake her up. Whatever. Maybe space elves have a real, I don't know, sensitive neck area, or maybe it really was James Bond and he just clobbered the shit out of her.
There's a little confab between the senior staff trying to figure out what's going on. And everyone's getting a little dicey. Everyone's getting a little paranoid. Tuvok is quick on the draw with his phaser against Kim for spacing out for a second while they contemplate using a ship-wide scan, a special technobabble scan that might reveal the entities that they're running up against. I don't know where the hell that quick draw was last week when someone, or 2 weeks ago, when someone was getting murdered in sickbay right in front of him and he didn't do fucking anything. Or,
traders were about to teleport off the ship, but clearly he learned his lesson. He's been practicing in the mirror like Raging Bull, pulling that Viper phaser out. That was cool, though, that, they're going over it. We don't know, really fleshing out the real danger of this possession alien that's running amok on the ship. And someone notices that Harry's just completely out of it. And for all intents and purposes, seems like someone who's possessed and just eavesdropping on conversation. So, yeah, we've got Tuvok pulling his phaser out and Torres getting the tricorder on him. I was right there with him. And Janeway kind of scolds people that, she doesn't like the paranoia. But it's like, I don't know, man, this seems like exactly the kind of attitude you have to take when you're in a high-level meeting talking about how to address the threat.
It's definitely an interesting idea. I just think it got developed way too late in this episode. The whole paranoia thing. Mm-hmm. It's halfway over before they actually introduce the premise that, anyone could be taken over at any time. That they're deep into the episode now, even further. And so they just never felt like they had enough time to develop it in a way that really made sense, because like with most episodes of Voyeur we watched, and we were talking about this before we started rolling tape on this episode, the end of this episode is very rushed, and everything kind of happens very quickly, and it wraps. We get the tense standoff in the conference room, and immediately after that, Tuvok goes back down to sickbay after some bullshit snarf doctor scene that sucked, and that's where the doctor says, actually, I think Kess might have gotten, a nerve area basically pinched or something like that, and Tuvok's like, oh, really? And then it just cuts from there back into Janeway's ready room, where she starts to put together that there's something wrong with Tuvok, perhaps, because suddenly the doctor's offline, but he's actually reporting the information, but in a cagey way, and it tries to start building this paranoia vibe. It's just doing it too late.
They that scene specifically in her ready room, something happened where they're like running on half power at this point, isn't it?
Well, they the warp core got turned off.
That's right. Yes. So they're in like this
dealing with that. Yeah.
I thought they had some really cool lighting in this episode. A lot of nice shadow play and dark lit scenes that looked cool. And I disagree. I think they do start building the paranoia pretty good.
They come out the ready room, and we get an amazing fight scene. As essentially the entire...
You're not saying that sarcastically.
Right? I am not. Like, this is some top-notch Trek fighting that happens here.
Yeah. Because I was really impressed. Like, and there's a lot of moving pieces in this thing. This was really cool. If for no other reason to watch this scene or this episode, it's this scene.
So the concept here is that it isn't the traditional he's taken over. No, he's taken over. It all happens basically at once, and the entire bridge crew starts fighting each other as who's getting possessed by the entity seems to shift. At one point, Janeway gets hit by it, tries to shoot Tuvok. At one point, Paris is like backhand punching and shooting somebody else that looks like they got possessed. And one by one, the entire bridge crew is basically in this intricate...
Fred Durst is in there throwing down.
It's pretty well shot and interesting and quick. And it
punches, kicks, snap kicks, close quarter phaser combat.
And it ends with Tuvok like turning on his phaser on a wide dispersal and stunning everyone in the room.
That was the coolest shit, because I've read all the technical manuals and I know that the phasers could do it, and you've never ever seen a phaser go wide dispersal until this point, and it is badass. He just drops everybody in one wave. Very gangster, very cool.
So yeah, it comes out of nowhere too. It's just all of a sudden boom, 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 and the fight's over after Tuvok basically clears it, and everyone kind of wakes back up in sickbay, trying to deal with their stun gun hangover.
The stun gun hangover, I like that.
I would say that Tuvok was obviously the MVP and that he stunned everybody with his Service 9, but Tom Paris represented hard in that fight scene. He was shooting dudes. He was like doing some karate. Like he was demonstrating value.
Well, you learn how to fight in prison, apparently.
Yeah, that's right. If he had busted on the prison shank, that would have been some top-notch continuity, but unfortunately not.
He's got a keister shank hidden in there. So let's dive into some, things not to do when you have a rogue poltergeist possessing people on your ship causing problems. I'm going to put at the top of the list, like, if I'm Janeway doing the after action report, like, where did I go wrong? What should I not do again? If you have essentially a precursor to a murder mystery, I don't think that arming everybody with a phaser is the right way to handle the threat, because now you've given the alien unlimited people with unlimited guns to cause absolute hell to go down. I think you're better off saying lock all the guns up, and that way we can just swarm the one dude who's acting goofy instead of giving the dude who's acting goofy a gun to shoot us over and over again.
That would make sense if anyone but Tuvok and Paris effectively used their Service 9s in this episode, because that's something I wanted to bring up later. But Tuvok at this point has clearly become the most likely culprit for doing essentially all of the bad things that we've seen in this episode.
And a quick recap on that, you've got someone pinning shit on, seemingly pinning stuff on Paris, including, Tuvok saying, well, hey, I found your DNA all over there. Did you catch that too when Tuvok's like, by the way, we know it was you down in Astrometrics rerouting power because I found your DNA all over the council. Like, the B plot of this episode should be Tom Paris needs to start using soap and washing his hands with warm water.
That, or apparently Tuvok found his secret masturbation den. Or he goes to rub one off while he's on duty.
He's framing Paris, and he took a sock out of off the floor. It's like a stiff sock, and he turned it upside down and like inside out, just wiped it on one of the panels. So, yeah, basically Tuvok steps forward as the most likely culprit
yeah.
of who has been causing these problems. And this is where I think the episode did a real clever job and kind of impressed me with its writing.
Yeah, the twist is not that Tuvok is essentially been possessed by a bad guy. It's that he's been possessed by the bad guy all along. And the person that's been possessing everyone else has actually been Chakotay, and he has been doing it to get them to not go into the nebula they are now in, so they get their brains stolen. So, very clever. You knew Tuvok, the stuff with Tuvok was going to come into play, or rather, the stuff with Chakotay would probably come into play eventually. But they hit it. They hit it in a way that once the reveal comes down, and they do it through Janeway putting it together, which I always appreciate, science officer putting the shit together. However, they're in a bad spot because Tuvok got his gat out on everybody, and even though everyone else is armed, nobody pulled a gun on him, and is trying to get the ship into.
They learned their lesson after the last time he went full dispersed on their ass, because he's got everybody like grouped real nice and tight, and everybody has already been zapped, so they know what's up.
And of course, this guy is trying not to kill him because doesn't want to spoil the meal he's about to give to his people of tasty Federation brains. And they go through the climax of the episode in that Janeway basically does a slow motion duck to her console.
So bad. How did he not shoot her ass? They might as well have like dubbed that no from $6 Million Man, where like he would jump off the stairs in like super slow motion. Ridiculous.
And
she dives under the fucking railing and like
she doesn't dive
and pecks on.
She just kind of leans. Like, it's not dramatic at all. She
goes to that center console that flips up between the captain and the XO, and then she like hunts and pecks on the keyboard for like the execution code to flash the MacGuffin strobe light.
And the MacGuffin strobe light, when it hits, exiles the alien from Tuvok, and they're able
who gets knocked the fuck out yet again.
The third brain injury of the episode. And Chakotay sends a message through Snarf onto his Oregon Trail Indian spirit map of how the ship can get out. And Tom drives the ship out, and they get a nice exterior effect shot as they exit the nebula. It's actually pretty cool looking. And
Don't you dare sweep this under the carpeting. We're going back. Rewind this thing back. Tuvok gets zapped with the strobe light and floats out to whatever. And now they're stuck in this nebula of dangerous radiation. They have to escape before the rest of these astral projection psychic vampires descend upon the Voyager and eat everybody's spirit essence or whatever. Yeah, Chakotay possesses Neelix, who's fucking around. Oh yeah, he's watching over Kess in sickbay. He possesses Neelix to go play on his magnetic rock map. And then Neelix calls the captain and says, hey, I think I just got possessed. And then my jaw hits the fucking floor, because what does Janeway do? Joe.
Oh yeah. I forgot.
She tells the computer to turn on the fucking security camera. The fucking security camera in sickbay.
You're gonna have an episode. You're gonna have a stroke, dude. You gotta breathe with me, pal.
They have security cameras on Voyager. They have them.
They don't.
They point right at the Ouija board. You've got Seska, a fucking traitorous, treasonous, whatever, who you're running these silly games of life and death to try and see if it's her or Joe Carey that is the culprit. There's cameras in sickbay. What the fuck?
I was trying.
You got memory engrams. You use the camera on the bridge and rewind it and see, was that really Paris who fucked with the console?
All this time, I mean, I was trying to avoid this to preserve your sanity.
No.
Once I saw this, I looked to my wife and I asked, "Hey, have you listened to the most recent episode that we've done yet?" And she said, "No, I haven't listened to it yet." And she said, "Well, when you do, you're going to find out that Peter's going to have a fucking stroke as soon as he sees this scene. Because how is it that you have obvious security cameras in this world now when it could have solved every fucking problem they had for the last 2 episodes if they had bothered to ever establish this?
Who needs teleporters and holodecks and all the other fantastic technologies? You've got fucking tech from the 1980s that could fix at least half of these Voyager plots we've encountered so far. And that's not all. I mean, they really one-two you with fucking terrible moves here. So they turn on this camera that everybody forgot existed in fucking sickbay up to this point, and they zoom it in on Oregon Trail Ouija board. And then Janeway's like, "Oh, hey, here's some rocks magnetically stuck to a rug. Overlay a map of the sector we're in, or the nebula we're in." And the computer puts this overlay up over it and positions it just right. God only knows if it's relative positioning or what true north is. Whatever. The computer slaps a map over it, and they're like, "Oh, hey, look, these magnetic Chinese stone massage rocks. They look like these planetoids." And Chakotay, the astral projection of Chakotay has just mapped our escape route. Let's fly the ship out and get out of here. No big deal. Okay, so Chakotay is floating around in the astral plane. He is possessing people like, Swayze and Ghost. He has
no pottery though. I mean,
No. Pottery's far too simple. Up to this point, you have entered in complex course corrections. You have rerouted helm control from master systems. You have not only reset the master computer and put the warp core into some sort of a maintenance mode, but then ultimately ejected the fucking warp core. That's how Janeway knows that it's Chakotay that's the possessing alien, is that Torres doesn't, as chief engineer for some reason, doesn't have the authority to jettison a warp core, that it would have had to be her or Chakotay, and that she's like, "Oh, it's Chakotay that's floating around," which was a strong thing. But ejects the fucking warp core, which I'm sure is pretty complicated. You've got super complex shit Chakotay's pulling off here. You're telling me he couldn't have fucking grabbed a pencil and written a note and said, "Hey, by the way, poltergeist alien is Chakotay. Tuvok is compromised. Stay away from nebula, space vampires, danger." All of the other shit he does is master or doctoral level engineering feats he's pulling off here, but he can't just shoot off a fucking IM. He can't text message Janeway.
BT dub. This is Chakotay. Yeah. Tuvok = evil. Sad face emoji.
Yeah. You don't need Kess to psychically bridge out and fucking talk to this guy. You need AOL Instant Messenger. So yeah, between the miraculous discovery of a security camera in sickbay and Chakotay's unwillingness to just fire off an email, excuse me, my insides fucking dissolving as I go insane here.
It's what I was trying to prevent from happening, Peter. I knew this shit was going to make
If you wanted to
suffer.
prevent it, you wouldn't be making us watch this stuff. Like, it's such a good episode, and then just this I don't know, this avalanche of poop.
Well, okay, so the episode wraps. The Doctor works a little space magician medical magic and reintegrates Chakotay's spirit into his body.
Oh, the third part. Okay, you have pulled. You're able to pull Chakotay out of astrally projecting in space and put him back in his body, but you couldn't wake Kess up from a Vulcan nerve pinch. What? What?
So, and he even passive aggressively bitches about how amazing what he just pulled off was, but there'll be no one to appreciate his genius, and then he just kind of fucks off.
Well, you know what, Doctor? You kind of set the bar a little too high when you tipped your hand that you can bring people back from the dead. Excuse me that, putting Chakotay's mind back in his body just isn't enough to get a rise out of the rest of us anymore.
So, blah, blah, episode ends. So, I agree with you that this episode was actually started out interesting. It just was paced very poorly. It didn't explore the whole paranoia aspect with much depth until it was too late. And then it just, after they have this great revelation that Tuvok is the bad guy and the thing they've been worried about is actually Chakotay trying to help them, not hurt them, they just kind of end the episode. They just cheat. They just they put in the Konami code real quick for writing loopholes and get to the end. They just didn't care about fuck it, there's a camera down there, fuck it, there's we just put a spirit back in his body because science.
Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, the space vampire phantoms don't pursue Voyager, even though they basically got it on the ropes. Warp core is gone. They can't. They're flying out of there in thrusters. I don't understand why the aliens just call off their attack and let them get away scot-free. While the USS Liability was flying through the wrong side of the tracks nebula, if Chakotay got legit jumped and knocked out, they got the jump on him. They won. Why wasn't he devoured? How did he stick with the shuttle and escape?
They don't explain how it is that Tuvok wasn't brain food. That was the whole point. This alien was trying to bring him in there to eat them.
There was nothing there.
But they nailed Chakotay and they got his spirit out of his body, but they didn't need it.
They weren't banking on him being such a spiritual badass native warrior. I want to point out another thing here. We keep ragging on Chakotay for always pulling out his best work when he's in the process of crossing through a threshold, right? We've talked about
that is correct. Yes.
This is a whole episode of that because he's doing his best work we've seen so far in this threshold, this not quite alive, not quite dead, just this transitory state, which I think is totally not intended, but strong supporting evidence for his predilection for hanging out in doorways, dropping the hotness.
It is kind of a metaphorical sort of take on that trope that we have decided exists. Yeah. And strangely and perfectly timed at that. I have mixed feelings about this one. It was a really interesting idea and it was executed poorly, and I will always take that over boring, because it wasn't boring.
No.
I was 100% engaged in this episode. So certainly better than your time and agains, for example. But
I really like the episode.
It just
I think for us it's a perfect perfect episode. I didn't see the Chakotay twist come in there at all. I thought that it was going to be a legit body jumping villain. Tuvok being the Manchurian candidate, I guess not Manchurian, but Tuvok being the traitor the whole time was a real good twist. We got to see a wide dispersal phaser shot, which how cool was that? And whoever wrote this episode knew that eventually in 2018 you and I would get around to shitting on it, and they just put the hottest loophole plot hole gems in there possible. We could just punch this thing in the dick while having a pretty solid episode to go with. Like, I loved it, and great Janeway hair to boot. You know how?
Yeah, straight. Not only great Janeway hair, but good Janeway overall, which I always hunger for. But significant points off for just not pacing it right. It just wasn't paced well. They took way too long to set up the premise and not enough time exploring the paranoia.
Maybe this is why Chakotay waited until last minute. Maybe he enjoyed being in this astral projection form, and the reason why the pacing is so slow and like, you know, he'd just come and fix everything with a note was, you know, you notice that we didn't hear anything out of the Delaney sisters this episode.
It's true.
I think you know where Chakotay was and who he was possessing with most of his time during this episode.
Ooh, man, that's too hot for TV right there. That Jenny Delaney, she hungers. So that's a match made in lustful heaven. The next episode is Faces. I recall this being very interesting in terms of how they decide to proceed with the dilemma. So I'm looking forward to watching it again. It's been a long time since I've seen this one, but I'm interested to see how it measures up.
I'm feeling good. We've had a good run of strong episodes here, so I'm looking forward to this one. Let's go ahead and close this out here with yet another Ferengi rule of acquisition, and this one's going to be aimed at our friend Chakotay. A wise man can hear profit in the wind, because you know
that's true.
He's in the wind. I don't. Whatever. It works. It works. All right.
Wind. I get it. I'm there. I'm with you. That's metaphorically resonant, Peter, and I appreciate the effort you've put in.
Clearly, more effort than they put in the end of closing this goddamn episode out. So.
And this will conclude V'ger Please, A Hateful Voyage to the Delta Quadrant. Please join us on Facebook as well as on our Facebook group, the V'ger Please Trauma Support Group. You are all welcome to be part of our discussions and our hot Voyager memes. And we'll give you guys details on when our live episode will happen exactly. And, give you an opportunity to weigh in on topics and what you would like us to talk about as we reflect on the first season of Voyager, which is rapidly coming to a close for us here. So until then, I'm Joseph.
Joe, there are cameras in sickbay. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand.
There are cameras in sickbay.
They knew Seska did it. Yes. They knew because they watched it on the camera. It's like they could have cut 20 minutes out of that episode. I understand.
All right. I'm Peter.
And we'll see you guys next week. Peace.